There's something about the very beginning of a night that sets the tone for everything that follows. And as I ease you into this story, I want you to feel like you're stepping into a space that is calm, warm, and entirely your own. Imagine, if you will, that we've just spawned into a brand new Minecraft world, one of those rare spawns that makes you pause before moving even a single step forward. The air is clear, the sky is painted in shades of gold as the sun begins its descent, and around us stretches a meadow that seems designed for peace, with rolling grass, scattered patches of wildflowers, and a river meandering lazily at the edge of the biome. There are no immediate threats, no harsh landscapes pressing down upon us, only the wide expanse of potential, waiting for us to decide what will be built here. I tell you tonight's plan softly, as if sharing a secret. We'll craft something fitting for the story that's about to unfold, a decorated hall where vows could be spoken, surrounded by a garden filled with bright blooms and paths that guide us gently from one moment to the next. The story itself is heavier, stranger, even chaotic at times. But the ground we stand on now is steady, and the world we'll build together will serve as an anchor whenever things feel a little too stormy. I invite you, just as I would a guest into my home, to set down whatever you've been carrying today, the worries, the tasks unfinished, the conversations that replay in your head when you'd rather be resting. In this space, none of that matters. Here, the only rhythm that matters is the sound of blocks being placed one after another, the way water laps gently against the banks of the river, the occasional call of a cow in the distance, reminding us that life continues quietly. And as we stand here on the soft grass, preparing to begin our build, I'll let you in on what we'll be talking about tonight. A wedding day, one that should have been about joy, love, and beginnings, but instead became tangled with echoes of the past, when an ex appeared and tried to pull everything off course. It sounds wild, even messy, doesn't it? And yet, as with all stories, this one isn't told to leave you restless or uneasy. It's a story that climbs to tension and then slowly drifts downward into resolution, always cushioned by the quiet of our Minecraft surroundings, always balanced with humor and calm, always ending in peace. So, as I walk toward the riverbank to gather a few seeds and flowers for our project, I think about how beginnings often feel this way. An empty world, an empty canvas, the promise of something meaningful ahead. Sometimes we spawn in unexpected worlds, ones that catch us off guard or place us in landscapes we didn't anticipate. But what matters, I remind you, is not where we begin, but what we choose to build upon the land we're given. Tonight, we build both in-game and in-story, shaping a space where chaos can be safely explored and then gently put to rest. You're safe here, you're welcome here, and together, we'll carry this story until it finds its quiet ending. Weddings, no matter how big or small, carry with them this hum of anticipation, like the whole world pauses for just a moment to watch two lives promise to walk forward together. And in the story we begin tonight, that hum was everywhere. The bride woke with a sense of calm, threaded with nerves, as if her body knew the importance of the day even more than her mind did, and she moved through the morning surrounded by family, each person bustling in their own way, one adjusting flowers, another checking the music list, another fussing over small details that would hardly matter once the vows began. The setting was simple, intimate, almost small town in its sweetness. A hall decorated with strings of soft lights, tables adorned with roses and wildflowers, and the smell of fresh bread and cake drifting from the kitchen. Everyone who mattered seemed to be there, people who had watched her grow, friends who had stood by her side, loved ones who would remember this day as a marker in the story of their family. And in Minecraft, as I recount this scene, I'm gathering flowers of my own, wandering across the meadows near our spawn to pick up bright patches of poppies, daisies, and cornflowers. I imagine placing them near the hall we're constructing, a wide frame built of oak and stone, with an archway leading into the main space where vows could be spoken. Every petal I collect feels like a mirror of the real celebration, as if the virtual blossoms can carry the energy of that wedding day, grounding us in something both tangible and peaceful. As I place down the first few decorations, I think about how weddings, whether in stories or in our own lives, rarely go as perfectly as planned. And yet the imperfections, the laughter when something goes awry, are what make the day truly memorable. In this particular wedding, laughter was plentiful. Guests chuckled when the flower girl tripped slightly and tossed her petals in one hurried clump. They laughed when the best man stumbled over a joke in his speech. Even the bride herself found herself smiling so wide, her cheeks ached, as if joy itself was bubbling up faster than she could contain it. There was, however, a subtle undercurrent in the room. Nothing overt, just the faint sense that somewhere in the background something was brewing. A relative whispered too quietly, an old friend shifted awkwardly in their seat, and the bride caught, just for a fleeting second, the strange glimmer in someone's eyes as though they knew something she didn't. Foreshadowing has a way of sneaking in softly, doesn't it? Just like in Minecraft, when you wander too far into a dark cave without torches and catch the faint sound of a skeleton rattling its bones before you even see the danger. That was the energy in the room, joy on the surface. But beneath it, the first small ripples of tension hints that not all stories play out without interruption. And as the hall filled with the sound of chatter and music, and the decorations glowed beneath the soft lights, no one quite realized that the day was about to take a turn that would test not only the bride's patience, but also her strength. The first whispers of unease began almost invisibly, tucked inside the kind of moments that most people brush off as nothing more than coincidence or idle curiosity. The bride, still floating on the excitement of the day, noticed glances here and there from the edges of the room, faces she hadn't expected to see or hadn't thought about in years. And though she tried to push the thought aside, this was her day. After all, there was an undercurrent she couldn't ignore. One of her cousins leaned in at the reception, their voice low and almost conspiratorial, asking casually, "Did you know he showed up?" The bride blinked, caught off guard, her mind scrambling to fill in the blanks. "Who?" she asked, almost afraid to hear the answer. The cousin hesitated for a beat, then muttered a name she hadn't heard in months. Her ex. In Minecraft, while recounting this delicate shift in atmosphere, I've begun laying the foundation for the hall, smoothing out the ground with a shovel, replacing rough patches of dirt with even stone blocks, making sure the structure will stand steady. It's a reminder, really, of how important foundations are in buildings, in relationships, in stories, and how even the strongest ones can be shaken by cracks you don't see until it's almost too late. Each block I place feels like an act of grounding, a way of steadying the world we're in, even as the story drifts into uncertainty. Back in the wedding hall, the bride forced a smile, telling herself it couldn't possibly be true. Her ex, here, on her wedding day? It sounded too ridiculous, too theatrical, like something out of a movie, not real life. And yet, as she moved through the crowd, greeting guests, thanking friends, and sharing hugs, she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching her more intently than they should. She caught sight of a figure near the back, just for a second, before turning away, but her stomach tightened instinctively, her pulse quickening. She told herself it was nerves, the natural jitter of being the center of attention, but deep down, she already knew. Unease works that way, creeping in like a shadow at the edge of torchlight in a cave, not yet close enough to strike, but always present enough to be felt. It was in the way certain guests whispered quietly, in the quick glances exchanged that were never explained, in the laughter that didn't quite reach people's eyes. And though the bride clung to her joy, clung to the vows she had just spoken and the love she had just promised, there was a quiet storm gathering, one that would reveal itself soon enough. It happened suddenly, in the way that disruptions often do. One moment the room was filled with laughter and the soft hum of conversation, and the next it was pierced by a voice the bride hadn't expected to hear again. "Not here. Not today. Not ever." Her ex stepped forward, not from the shadows but from the crowd itself, as though he had been hiding in plain sight, waiting for the right moment to make himself known. The hall fell into that uneasy hush that comes when a room full of people collectively sense that something is about to unfold, something not rehearsed or scripted, something raw. He carried himself with a kind of misplaced confidence, the sort of bravado that masks desperation, and as he moved closer, every eye turned to watch. In Minecraft, I find myself building up the arch of the wedding hall, raising oak beams high into the air so that they curve above the doorway, a symbol of strength and ceremony. I place lanterns along the edges, their warm glow casting away the gathering dusk. But even here, in this peaceful space, I think about how sometimes you can build the most careful structure and still find an unexpected visitor wandering in, a stray villager, a wandering trader, even a creeper drifting silently too close to your walls. Just like in the story, sometimes the boundaries you thought were solid are breached, and you must decide how to respond when the unexpected crosses into the center of your world. The ex spoke with a strange combination of certainty and pleading, his words tumbling out as though he had rehearsed them 1,000 times. He told her in front of everyone that this marriage was a mistake, that she was meant to be with him, that he had come to stop something he believed shouldn't happen. Gasps echoed across the hall, guests exchanging looks of disbelief, some shaking their heads, others leaning forward as though watching a scene they couldn't quite believe was real. The groom stiffened beside the bride, his jaw tightening, his hand squeezing hers with steadying resolve, and though her heart pounded in her chest, the bride lifted her chin, determined not to let this intrusion shatter the sanctity of her day. There was a rawness to the ex's presence, a kind of chaos that made the room feel unsettled, like the ground itself had shifted beneath everyone's feet. And yet, in that moment, the bride understood something clearly. This was not about her wedding so much as it was about his inability to let go, his need to pull her back into a past she had already left behind. The discomfort in the hall thickened, but so too did her resolve. Sometimes in life, just as in Minecraft, an unexpected enemy spawns in your carefully built safe zone. But if you hold steady, if you remember why you built those walls in the first place, you can weather the storm without losing what matters most. The air in the hall grew heavier with every passing second, the silence fractured only by the ex's voice, rising and falling as though he were conducting some twisted performance in which the bride and groom were unwilling actors. He spoke of the past, of memories they had shared, of moments that once mattered, and though part of her wanted to shout back, to tell him that those days were gone, she knew that anger would only feed the fire. Guests whispered nervously, their words colliding with one another like scattered embers, the atmosphere teetering on the edge of something larger. The groom shifted slightly, his protective stance unmistakable, his eyes fixed firmly on the man before them, while the bride's hand trembled in his, but her face remained calm, a mask she forced to keep control. In Minecraft, I narrate as I fortify the hall, laying down additional fences outside, planting torches along the pathways, and even crafting a small defensive wall around the courtyard. These acts, though simple in gameplay, mirror the instinct we all feel when confronted with unexpected conflict. The need to secure, to defend, to create safe boundaries where chaos cannot so easily intrude. Each block I place feels like a declaration that peace will be preserved here, even if the outside world pushes in with its noise and its demands. The tension at the wedding deepened when the ex moved closer, his words sharper, his voice edged with desperation, almost pleading yet laced with arrogance. He insisted that she was marrying the wrong man, that this was her last chance to correct what he saw as a mistake. And though his voice cracked with the weight of his emotions, the bride saw through it not love, not care, but control, an attempt to reclaim what he had lost. Some guests tried to intervene, their voices raised in awkward attempts to calm him, while others stayed frozen, caught between curiosity and discomfort. The bride felt the storm building, a mixture of anger, sadness, and determination swirling within her. This was supposed to be her day, the celebration of love she had chosen, and yet here was a shadow from her past attempting to rewrite the script. She thought of all the effort, the planning, the vows spoken with sincerity only hours before, and she refused to let his intrusion undo it. Like a player defending a build from mobs in the dead of night, she realized that resilience was not about avoiding conflict altogether, but about standing steady when it arrived uninvited. knowing that the walls you've built in your life, in your relationships, in your heart, are stronger than any voice trying to tear them down. The moment swelled to a breaking point, that razor-thin edge between words and action where everyone seemed to hold their breath, waiting to see which way the balance would tip. The ex, emboldened by his own persistence, stepped closer still, his voice loud enough now to drown out the nervous whispers around him. He declared, almost dramatically, that he could not let this marriage continue, that he loved her too much to watch her make what he framed as a mistake, and though the words echoed with passion, they rang hollow to the bride's ears, like echoes bouncing back from a canyon, loud but empty. The groom finally spoke, his tone calm yet firm, his words a clear boundary that reverberated through the hall. "This is not your place. This is our life, our choice." The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the faint sound of someone clearing their throat, the shuffling of uneasy feet against the polished floor. In Minecraft, I narrate how the build has shifted from delicate decoration to fortification, as though the game itself reflects the tension in the story. I place iron doors at the entryways of the hall, secure them with pressure plates, and add extra lanterns to brighten the dim corners where shadows might hide. Each click and placement feels like a statement of control, of resilience, of taking what could be fragile and reinforcing it with strength. It is the same instinct that fills the bride's chest in this moment, a refusal to let her wedding, her sanctuary, be turned into a battleground for someone else's unresolved emotions. The bride, her heart pounding like a drumbeat inside her chest, finally found her voice. It was not loud, not angry, but steady and unyielding, the kind of voice that comes when you are speaking not just for yourself, but for the future you've chosen. She told him that their time had ended long ago, that whatever story they had once written together had reached its final page, and that she was already living in a new chapter with the man by her side. The words carried a finality that rippled through the crowd, and for the first time the ex faltered, his shoulders sagging beneath the weight of reality, his confidence beginning to unravel. Guests held their breath, watching the confrontation resolve in real time, some with pity for the man who could not let go, others with admiration for the bride's strength. The groom's hand tightened gently around hers, his calm presence a quiet shield, and in that moment she felt something shift inside her. The understanding that sometimes love is not about dramatic declarations or bold interruptions, but about the quiet, steady choice to stand by someone's side, even in the face of chaos. Just as in Minecraft, when the night falls and enemies gather, the player's strength lies not in avoiding the dark, but in standing firmly in the light of what they've built, holding ground until the storm passes. When the echoes of confrontation finally faded, the air in the hall seemed to shift, as though an invisible weight had been lifted yet still left a trace of heaviness behind. The ex, realizing that his words had failed to bend the moment to his will, stood there with his face caught between stubbornness and defeat, his eyes searching the crowd for sympathy, but finding only awkward silence and sidelong glances. At last, someone, perhaps a family member or a close friend, stepped forward, guiding him gently but firmly toward the exit, and the murmurs that followed were like the tide pulling back after a storm, cautious but steady, leaving behind the quiet evidence of what had just taken place. The bride, still standing tall beside her groom, felt her body tremble now that the surge of adrenaline was subsiding, and though her hand was still clasped tightly in his, she allowed herself a slow breath, one that seemed to signal to her heart that it could finally rest. In Minecraft, I describe how the hall, once so tense with shadows, now feels calmer as I turn my attention back to softer details. I scatter flower pots along the windowsills, add bookshelves into the corners, and place a small painting above the hearth, touches that bring warmth back into the build after the defensive energy of earlier. Each gentle click of placing these items mirrors the emotional act of softening after conflict, the way a home becomes livable again after fear, the way love can fill a space once the echoes of anger have been chased out. The build, like the wedding, shifts back toward beauty, reminding us that disruption, while painful, is not the final note. The couple exchanged quiet words, their voices low enough to be drowned out by the murmurs of guests resettling into their seats, but within that whisper lay the essence of their bond. She told him that she was sorry their day had been tainted, that she hated the memory of someone trying to overshadow the joy they had worked so hard to create. But he shook his head, reminding her that no outside voice, no dramatic interruption, could diminish what they had just pledged to each other. Their vows, spoken with sincerity, still stood, and if anything, this intrusion only deepened their resilience, proving that their foundation was strong enough to withstand a storm. The guests, too, began to settle, some offering sympathetic smiles, others raising their glasses in quiet gestures of support. The air warmed again as laughter returned, hesitant at first, but gradually growing steadier, like a fire being coaxed back to life after the embers threatened to fade. The bride realized then that the ex's attempt had not destroyed her moment, it had tested it, revealed its strength, and in doing so had made the bond she shared with her husband even more unshakable. Like a Minecraft build that survives an unexpected raid, scarred but intact, the beauty lies not in its perfection but in its endurance, in its ability to still stand tall and inviting when the night has passed. As the evening carried on, the sharp edges of the confrontation softened into the background, until it seemed less like a fresh wound, and more like a passing storm that had rumbled through but left the house still standing. The bride and groom, once rattled by the unexpected intrusion, now found themselves settling into the steady rhythm of celebration, their laughter mingling with that of their guests, as the hall regained its warmth and joy. The music rose again, softer at first, as though testing whether the air was safe, then growing more confident, filling the space with a sense of relief, like sunlight breaking through clouds. The bride looked around at her friends and family, the faces of those who had stood quietly in solidarity during the interruption, and she felt a gratitude so deep it seemed to anchor her to the moment more firmly than ever before. In Minecraft, I narrate the way I finished the wedding hall by placing gentle finishing touches, adding candles to the tables, setting out flower arrangements near the entryway, and even laying a simple carpet runner down the aisle. Each of these small acts of design feels like a metaphor for closure, not erasing what happened, but adding new layers of beauty that help redefine the space, ensuring that it will be remembered for love rather than disruption. The slow placement of each block is soothing, a reminder that even after chaos, there is always room to build peace, to create softness in the aftermath of noise. The couple eventually shared their first dance, their movements slow and tender, not meant to dazzle but simply to embody the truth of their commitment. Guests watched with admiration, some even wiping tears from their eyes, not because the dance was grand, but because it was real, a quiet defiance against the chaos that had tried to intrude. The bride rested her head against her groom's chest, hearing the steady beat of his heart, and realized that this was the rhythm she would carry forward. Not the shouts of someone stuck in the past, but the steady pulse of someone choosing to walk with her into the future. As the night drew toward its close, she found herself reflecting on what had happened, not with anger, but with clarity. Love, she realized, was not defined by dramatic gestures or desperate pleas, but by consistency, respect, and the willingness to grow together despite the world's interruptions. The ex's attempt had been disruptive, yes, but it had also highlighted the contrast between the chaos of holding on to what is gone and the peace of embracing what is meant to be. It was like the difference between an abandoned Minecraft structure, crumbling and left behind, and the vibrant glow of a new build where life continues to unfold. One cannot live in ruins forever. Eventually, one must move on and construct something new. The hall, now glowing in candlelight and laughter, no longer held the memory of intrusion so strongly. It was absorbed into the broader story of the night, woven into a fabric of joy, resilience, and renewal. And as the bride finally sat down with her groom, surrounded by those who loved and supported them, she knew with certainty that this moment would not be remembered for the interruption, but for the triumph of love that carried them through it, leaving only peace in its wake. As the story gently releases its final threads, the focus shifts fully toward rest and calm, leaving behind the ripples of drama like footprints fading on a shoreline. In Minecraft, I take a slow walk outside the completed wedding hall, the soft glow of lanterns spilling across the meadow, and the stars scattered above like grains of light strewn by some quiet hand. The river nearby reflects the shimmer of the moon, its ripples moving so slowly that they seem to invite the mind into stillness, as if urging both player and listener to let go of the day's lingering tension. I wander through the garden where flowers sway gently in the night breeze, their colors muted by the moonlight, but their presence still offering a comforting sense of continuity, reminding us that beauty persists even after conflict, and peace waits quietly for us to turn toward it. The gentle clicks of farming follow, rows of wheat swaying as I harvest them one by one, the rhythm steady and hypnotic, a soft percussion against the hush of the night. Chickens cluck faintly nearby, cows shuffle in their pens, and the faint splash of a fishing line breaking the surface of the river creates a serene backdrop, the kind of sound that carries listeners into a state of half-dream, where thoughts unravel and settle into calm. Each small detail in this digital world, though simple, becomes a symbol of restoration. Crops growing despite storms, animals resting despite night, a builder continuing to create even after disruptions. It becomes a reminder that, no matter how chaotic or unexpected life may be, there is always room to find quiet places of safety and joy. And so, with the hall behind me glowing like a memory, I guide the listener gently into stillness, offering gratitude for their presence, their time, and the trust they place in this shared journey of stories and building. I encourage them to release the noise of the day, to let their thoughts drift like leaves carried on the current, and to remember that rest is not a weakness, but a gift, one that restores the heart and readies it for the morning. Just as the Minecraft character climbs into a soft bed within the little cottage I've built nearby, so too do I invite the listener to tuck themselves into rest, knowing they are safe, knowing that the story has resolved, and knowing that the night is theirs to claim in peace. And with a final soft blessing, I close. May your dreams be calm, your heart light, and your tomorrow bright with the quiet strength you've carried through today. The screen fades to the hush of in-game night, where the only sounds are crickets and the rustle of wind in pixelated leaves, carrying both builder and listener into the silence of rest.